Am I seeing double or... Hi guys, Matthew here and welcome back again to my channel. I assume that some of you saw my recent 60 versus 165 Hz monitor comparison that I did, so you got a pretty good insight to what's my favorite hobby, racing, I like racing, which directly ties into what I'm going to take a look today, Logitech's fresh out of the oven G923 steering wheel and pedals. Since I got the G29 with me also, I've decided to do direct comparison between these two models, so all of you who are maybe thinking of upgrading from it, or even older models, can see what are you going to get for your hard-earned money. From the get-go, well, there's not that much difference between them at all, at least not physical. It seems that Logitech went down that if it's not broken, don't fix it road. Everything is pretty much the same, the design and look of the steering wheel is identical, the only thing that is changed is the color scheme of the controller part around the center ring of the wheel hub. It reminds me a bit of the G920, the Xbox version of the G29 wheel. Speaking of the controller, you've probably noticed that we have that well recognizable shapes and layout of the 14 additional buttons, together with the 24-point selection dial and plus and minus D-pad. So yes, this is the version that supports the PlayStation and PC, and in terms of the PC version, all of them are programmable using the Logitech's G-Hub utility software, from appointing a macro function to drag and drop customization of different signs. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention we now have a G logo on the center steering wheel cap instead of the PlayStation one. There will also be an Xbox supported version of the G923 model, and the button layout will be basically the same compared to the PlayStation and PC model, as opposed to how different was the G920 to G29 in that regard. On the bottom steering wheel arm you'll now get that plus and minus D-pad, an extra turning wheel and enter button. This time we don't have a dedicated switch to jump between these two platforms, now you just plug it in and it works, just like that it knows where did you plugged it in, although we still do have that LED indicator light. Talking about lights, right below that we still have shift lights, but now in a bit of a different color scheme, where Logitech added a blue color, maybe to build up some brand awareness, although it's not like they need it. Kidding aside, some cars do use the green, red, blue buildup for the shifter light, so maybe that's the reason. The metal flappy pedals behind the wheel are now completely covered in black finish. The click mechanics looks and feels the same, very subtle but affirmative, although it sounds a bit lower pitched. The design of the housing hasn't changed at all, we still have this almost like a car looking backend, sort of imitating a front grille intake with lights, while we still have the same old latch mechanism with two L profile hooks on the bottom, and this pointy and roundy looking thingy that you twist and turn to tighten them up. I wish they made this whole latching mechanism out of metal, because the legs are prone to breaking due to wear of material as time passes, but as an alternative to that we still do have mounting holes for racing rigs. Other than that, the build quality is still really good, the whole wheel feels sturdy, its frame is completely made out of metal, while the rest of the housing is still put together using sturdy plastic. Turning it onto its back, you can see that nothing has changed, being it from these cable routing canals to connection points, everything is where it was on the G29. You still have a connection for the manual H shifter, and yes, the one that was for the G29 will also work on this, I've tried it myself, so you can just reuse it or buy yourself one if you don't have it. Although it doesn't show up in Logitech's G-Hub software utility with the G923, I assume they will fix that with an update. The same goes for the pedals, I've tried them just for the fun of it, it works like a charm, while the new G923 pedals themselves are completely the same design and construction wise compared to ones on the G29. On the back you still have some rubber pads in corners, mounting holes, and this pointy looking section that can pop out if you're going to put it on a carpet. The only thing that is different is the logo, or the lack of the Logitech's naming to be more precise. The same was done on the back of the steering wheel housing. After seeing all of this, you're probably wondering, and I was when I saw it first, what's actually different? You know, what's the catch? Why would they release a new model which looks basically the same as the old one? Secretly, I was hoping for a direct drive system, but that would be asking too much, especially for this price point. On the other hand, they did make some technical changes and implemented something that adds to the whole feedback experience with the feature called TrueForce. As far as I understood by looking at this picture on the box, since I couldn't disassemble this particular sample as I have to send it back so others can test it out, so better be safe than sorry, the two motor setup which they were using before and also now is translating the force and taking in your input over a big gear attached to the back end of the wheel, probably with the addition of same rack and pinion gear system as a stabilizer. So, by the looks of it, not a lot has changed when it comes to the wheel gearing system, as this type of solution proved to deliver more precise feedback and overall feel, while the True Force feature is something completely new. To be honest, I don't know how to feel about it. In some ways it's interesting, it does give you that feel of sort of like mechanical vibration and feedback that you would get when the whole chassis is vibrating from the engine and tires. All of that translates through the steering wheel itself. It does that by using game's physics and audio engine to interpret and provide additional information in real time. The weirdest thing about it is that it feels like someone is tickling me on my palms, ever so slightly subtle, almost like your palms are going numb. In some cases it can be borderline unpleasant. It's really hard to explain. I'm not sure how they achieved this from a technical aspect, if they included something like an additional ERM device or something else. At the moment this feature is not supported by a lot of games. For the PC that's only Assetto Corsa Competizione, so not the regular Assetto Corsa, which I actually drive a lot, so bear that in mind, and the iRacing. For the consoles that would again be Assetto Corsa Competizione and Gran Turismo Sports, but more games are soon to be supported, like Dirt and F1 series, and I'm sure that every other racing game like that will eventually be supported, being it on PC or consoles. In Assetto Corsa Competizione, the True Force feature can be picked up as micro vibrations, while in the iRacing it's a little bit more pronounced. It's almost like you have piezoelectric speakers imitating the in-game sounds. The setup is still not officially available through the iRacing menu, you have to configure an ini file, while with the Assetto Corsa Competizione you can do that under the controls settings, where you have a gain bar. There's not that much difference between 1 and 100%, it just waters it down a bit. All in all, it's not that I don't like it, I can see it being really useful, I'm just not sure if I need it or not. It doesn't give me any additional usable information on top of what I already had, but it does kick the immersiveness up a notch. Other than that, this is a very recognizable successor of the G29. It still does its calibration dance once you plug the USB and power brick, and as I just mentioned, since it remained as a gear-driven wheel, you do have more pronounced force feedback. Expectedly, it's not as smooth as some of the belt-based wheels out there, while when you start to get really precise, you can feel the steps of the gear's teeth. The force that it provides feels the same in terms of the torque, so that's around 2 Nm. Although I could be wrong on that as they don't specify this, there's a good chance that it's a bit higher or lower since they changed the gearing system. As for the pedals, everything looks to be the same, or at least feels the same. Linear throttle, aggressive 2-step brake, and a bit firmer clutch pedal, all of them working using a potentiometer. They seem to be ever so slightly less firm, although this could also be a placebo effect. On the other hand, the brake pedal lost that distinct 2-step feel, which is something that I worked on to improve. Now it feels a bit more natural when you really step on it and get to that end locking point. As I mentioned earlier, their physical design is completely the same, so if you're going over from it or G27 or G25, you won't have to adjust your heel and toe technique, and overall there's really nothing else to say, as the differences are non-existent. Speaking of those, I think this is where this new G923 wheel makes the most sense for all users who are maybe planning to upgrade from G25 or G27. I can see this being a decent jump in features for them. On the other hand, with everything shown here, I don't think that majority of users will have a need to upgrade from their G29 models, except maybe just to get their hands on something newer, or if theirs didn't stand the test of time in case they were using it constantly during those 5 years since it was released. Everything considered, next to the belt-driven Thrustmaster T300 RS, I still do think that the G29 and now the G923 is one of the best set of wheels and pedals you can get in terms of value for your money if you're serious about racing, and that's of course before you go and make the next step of getting one of the direct drive systems like ones from Fanatec and SimuCube, which cost can easily add up way above the $1,000 mark. That's it for this time from me. Thank you once again for watching. Please take a second to toss me a thumbs up if you enjoyed my content, that really helps a lot. And if you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe, and if you already are, be sure to press that notification bell down below so you don't miss out on a new video. And until then, catch you later guys.